We are seeing increasing numbers of places, both here in Scotland and across the rest of the UK, that are under local and regional restrictions. And of course, many of you will have woken up this morning to hear news of the potential for new national restrictions. The bottom line here is that this virus is on the rise again. Our case numbers are not yet rising as fast as they were back in March, but they are rising again, and they are rising quite rapidly. The percentage of tests coming back positive is also not anywhere near as high as it was back in March, but again, it is rising. And as I reported yesterday, the R number, we believe, is now above 1. Across the UK, this is particularly the case in England right now. Hospital admissions are rising, ICU admissions are rising too. And while this is particularly the case in England right now, this should sound a warning signal for us here in Scotland too. And while for the past few weeks people might have taken comfort from the low levels of older, more vulnerable people contracting the virus, I have to say to you that that picture is also beginning to change. Our most recent data shows that the percentage of cases in the older population is now beginning to rise as well. And looking more widely, we can observe that in broad terms, we might now be at an earlier stage on a similar path to that has been taken in recent weeks by France. About 4 weeks ago, France stood broadly where we do today, but now they have around 10,000 new cases per day, hundreds of people in ICU, and deaths in France are already rising now as well. So our task is to make sure, if we can, that we interrupt that and we don't end up where they are now. And what lies behind this is a simple reality. We are facing the risk again of exponential growth in COVID. And we all know from our experience earlier this year what that looks like and why it is so important to seek to avoid it. So I want to talk briefly about what we need to do. First and foremost, we need to act to interrupt that exponential growth. No one wants to see another full-scale lockdown. And above all, we want to keep schools and childcare open because we know how important that is to the education, but to the broader well-being of children and young people. So right now, and I mean right now, today, over the weekend and into next week, that means following all of the rules and advice currently in place. Work from home if you can, that remains our advice. As I said a moment ago, avoid if you can non-essential travel. Don't meet up with any more than 6 people from a maximum of 2 households, indoors and outdoors. If you live in Glasgow, as I do, or in East or West Dunbartonshire, Renfrewshire or East Renfrewshire, North or South Lanarkshire, don't visit other households at all at the moment unless you have to visit to care for or deliver shopping to a vulnerable person. The fact is, we know, and this is one of the things that we have learned about this virus, is that when it gets into a household, it is very likely to infect everyone in that household. So to be blunt, we must do everything we can to keep it out of our households. And when we do have to interact with others, the last piece of advice I want to remind you of right now is to remember to follow facts, all of the basic things that help us reduce the risks of transmitting the virus. So these are the current rules, and I'm asking everybody please to abide by them strictly and rigorously. But it may well be that if we are to interrupt and break this growth, we will have to do more over the next few weeks. And this weekend will be critical in the assessment of how best to do that. As widely reported, SAGE met yesterday. I have chaired a meeting of senior Scottish Government officials and advisers this morning to assess the current situation, and discussions across the 4 nations of the UK will, I hope, take place in the coming days. I've this morning asked the Prime Minister to convene a COBRA meeting over this weekend. So today I want to give the nation advance notice that the coming days are likely to see some hard but necessary decisions. If we want to avoid another full-scale lockdown, which all of us do, doing nothing almost certainly isn't an option. Now, I will, of course, as I have sought to do throughout this pandemic, keep you regularly and fully updated. But for now, over this weekend, please rigorously follow all of the current rules and all of the current advice.